My name is Amber. I'm 23 years old, and I have a story that's pretty much the most terrifying, unbelievable, shocking, and mostly horrifying that most people probably wouldn't even believe in. But it did happen to me. And I should point out that this happens more than you know. This happened when I was just barely 21 years old. And even to this day, even though there has been 2 years, I'm still having horrifying nightmares of this. And you may get the point eventually. Like I said, I was just 21 years old. At the time, I was single since the last boyfriend I had was in high school, but we broke up after an argument. I decided I wanted to be single for a while, and even though some of my friends had tried to set me up with some dates, but I always declined, but even I did accept it, I only went just on 1 or 2 dates. I wasn't really ready to start dating yet though. I mean, even if I went to a local community college at the time, and still am, and just I was just not ready to be as in a serious relationship. I mean, I did hang out with some of my guy friends, and they often said that I looked lonely. But if I had to be honest, being in a community college, it keeps me up almost every single night with some, um, you know, studying for exams and all that stuff. And honestly, I even was working at the retail store at the time, so sometimes I worked overnight shift, and I barely have any time for dating. And even if I did, it would probably be much any long term, because some guys probably felt I was avoiding him or make excuses that I was studying or I was at work overnight shift and all that stuff. I mean, can anyone blame me though? But when I was just 21, I just had turned 21 years old. So one of my friends had asked me and if I wanted to go with them to the bar, just have a girls' night, and I thought, why not? And I'm not going to mention any of my friends' names for privacy. And I'm not going to mention any location either. Because even though this has been 2 years, I don't want to have this ever to be found out for my privacy. But at the bar, we're just having a good time, we're just drinking. I was not much a big drinker, but even though an average drinker, but I don't drink that often. I mean, really, I really don't get out much as to do that, or I never had time for it. Anyways, I was actually with some of my close friends. We just talking, drinking, and just having a good time. When suddenly, one of my friends pointed out that there was this young man, probably just only 1 year older than myself, which turned out that he were 1 year older. He was looking at me, smiling, and she pointed out that I should probably go ask for to talk to him. I was like, no. But all of my friends actually managed to convince me some reason. No, I so I went over there, talked to him, sat down at his table, and sure enough, we actually have a quite decent conversation. I later find out his name was Jerry, and he was a local. And while we were talking, he actually asked me if I was local. I said, yeah, actually, I was born and raised in this town, and yeah. So, and after near the end, before we went to leave, he asked for my number. And when my friends heard this, they were like, without even hesitating to even ask me, one of my friends actually gave him my number. Even I scolded her out afterwards. She should have asked me for my permission first. But she brushed it off. It's like, he's just like a sweet guy. What was to be wrong with this? I told her, even if that's true, that he's a sweet, kind guy, but I'm not gonna date him for any seriously. I mean, I have a lot of things to be focused on. My work, school, and all that stuff. I barely have any time for socializing otherwise. But my friends told me at least try it. Since I've done it before, so I was like, alright, I will give him 2 times, through 2 dates. But if the second date doesn't even work, then we're done. And next time, I told my friends, don't give my number to anyone without my permission. I never give your numbers to anyone, complete strangers. That they make sense to me though. But for the next few days, me and Jerry we were just texting, talked on the phone, and even FaceTime. I later found out he was actually working as well at the gas station in town, well, on the outskirts. So that makes sense that he has some experience when it comes to overnight shift. So when I mentioned that, he's like, yeah, I know what it's like. I mean, working at this gas station, there was no middle of nowhere. It's just, I was like, he was actually well dressed for even to be working there. Well, but he said, my family is a little bit, well, it's actually wealthy at some part, so I don't mind to get the experience of being working. That kind of makes sense, I thought. Even if that he belonged to a well-rich family, and that that his family was probably so rich that he didn't even need to work. But he wanted to do some work and get this experience if something would happen to his family's fortune, he said. I mean, that makes sense. I mean, considering that a lot of rich families back in times had happened to that their companies or their entire fortune was lost, and that the family had been forced had to work to even being able to support himself. That makes sense. So after about almost 2 weeks, he asked me out, and I said yes, even though reluctantly I didn't want even to do it. But my friends pushed me to convince me to do it, and he actually took me to a nice restaurant in town, and we actually had a nice date. Even though I told myself, even if he asked me out for the second date, I will see if this could actually, perhaps, maybe, could lead to something more. And we start talking during the dinner, and he told me a little bit more about himself. Like I said, he belonged to a wealthy family, that he just wanted to do some experience in working, and that he was single all the time, and that he also had been to a community college, but he finished it a little bit earlier, or that he was trying to get to community college, but he dropped out since he couldn't handle much stress for that, which I can really rely on too. But after dinner, we actually went separate ways. And my friends did ask me, probing me for answers, like how my date went, how it's like, if it was a creep or if he was a gentleman. I told him that he was actually very like a true gentleman, but I said I have no feelings for Jerry at the moment, because it's basically we had just been on one single date, and even if we just started to get to know each other, it's unlikely that he would oh, I love you, but no. But after almost 2 weeks more, he decided to ask me out a second time, and we actually went to this type of small movie theater in town, and we actually decided to watch an action movie. I actually like action movies even to this day, and he didn't even try to hit on me or make a move if I wanted it, but I actually did. And I have really, to be honest, I started to like this guy. After a second date, I started to question myself if I should give him another chance or third date, or if I should end it here. I should have probably then ended quite soon, but you may understand, you will get the point eventually. But after that, we actually started seeing each other a little bit more often. Like, we went on the third, the fifth, almost, and then the 10th date. We had been on 10 dates at the time then. And it took us maybe just 2 months before we became even as official couple. My friends were just excited for me. And my family was quite surprised that I had been keeping this guy, Jerry, from them as a secret. I told them the reason why I didn't mention this is because before we even became official, we were just dating. I wasn't really sure if this could have been a long-term relationship or a short time. I didn't want to give my parents the wrong signals or make them wrong expectations. But when they finally met him, they actually had a very good conversation. But my brother Tom, who is only 18, he actually told me that he has some bad feelings about Jerry. I asked him after that Jerry had left and when my parents was busy. We were in his room. He told me that he had this bad feelings towards Jerry. I asked him to be specific, but he didn't actually give me this direct answer or why specifically he was having this bad vibe. He only said that it was like a bad aura around him, or if he has somehow bad intentions. Boy, I should have listened to my younger brother's intuition on this one, because this could eventually have saved my life. But I brushed it off and told my brother that he may just been because maybe he doesn't even know him. But my brother told me, just be careful, Amber. I don't want to see my older sister being, vanished from us and then never seen again. I would tell him that you don't have to be worrying that this guy is not even like it. But it happened that I should have listened to him. And sometime after this, me and my brother, and Jerry, we actually spent time in his apartment. And one night when I was sleeping, I actually heard him talking in the living room on the phone. This was probably like 1 in the morning. It's something like unusual since he had sometimes overnight time shift from 1 to almost 3 or 4 in the morning. So that makes sense. I couldn't actually hear much and only said, yeah, she is beautiful. Uh-huh. Yeah, she is. I was like, oh, he said he was telling a friend of mine about me. So I felt happy. But that was a red flag. But I didn't even put that out there much later on. But after being dating for almost 4 months, Jerry suggested that we take a trip to a nearby town to celebrate that we have been together for about 4 months. For a small couple trip, like stay over at a hotel, or go out for dinner, just having a good time. I thought it was actually not a bad idea. And luckily though, I actually told my family and friends where I was going, where I was going to stay, so they would know. My brother once again told me, just be careful. Before he left though, he actually told me that he had looked up Jerry. I was like, what? What do you mean looked him up? I mean, Jerry didn't have any form of social media or anything like it. I mean, most people don't want to have anything. But when he mentioned that he had asked a friend who actually has a father who works within the police department in town to do this background check on this particular Jerry. But somehow, Jerry wasn't even a local. There were no records of him being there, not even born there. Not there was no records of any name of any person that fit the description. That was quite odd, I thought myself. But maybe that Jerry wasn't his real first name. I thought maybe he was a middle name. I mean, so I know that some people actually prefer using the middle name, prefer the first name. I told him that to my brother, but he still told me to just be careful. If something would happen, call him or call the 911 immediately. I told him I would. So me and Jerry went to this small town, and we actually had a good time. We went to a restaurant and walked around the town, but then one evening when we were at the park, he suggested we stay at the watch his fountain. I thought that was okay. We had walked around for a little bit, so I needed to rest my feet a little bit. But suddenly he told me that he had used it had to take the call, and I can actually overheard him in a distant. Yeah, she's here. Yeah, we're ready. Okay, be quick. Need this immediately. I was thinking, what's going on here? What is actually acting so strange suddenly? But he thought that I never heard him because he was even that far away from us, far away from me. But as he was coming up to me, back to sit down and act like nothing happened. I asked him what the call was. He said it was just a friend that needed some help, and he will come back help me later. So I felt like, okay. But there was one other things about this particular event that quite surprised me. But when we went to this parking lot, there was a big van, not maybe 2 spaces away from his car, and suddenly the side door opened and 2 guys walked out and approached Jerry. It's like, so, is this her? Yeah, it is her. Okay, here's the money. I was like, what? Okay, you can go get her so we can leave here immediately. I was like, I did ask, Jerry, what's happening? The guys looked at me and it's like, you lady, keep quiet. Don't interrupt our business here. Business, I thought. Then I was about to go back to his car, to Jerry's car, so sit in it. But Jerry told me not to because he was not taking me home. I was like, what? Turned out Jerry was actually not the type of person he actually claimed to be. Turned out that, well, I will explain later on though, but when he told me that, I lost it. Jerry, we are done. And then I just want to turn around and walk away. Grab her immediately, said another guy. But before the guy could even do anything, I took off. I ran as fast as I could, and I actually managed to hide behind some bushes in the park. And as these guys, they actually ran after me. Both of them, include Jerry. But I didn't think they'd expect me to find me so easily, but they didn't. I actually crawled out of the bushes slowly. I actually walked back to the cars, not to jump in at the start because I didn't even had his keys, but I took a picture both of Jerry's license plate and this van. And I was like, this might be evidence for something bad will happen. So I ran off, hiding in a different spot, calling for 911, and most of the people will be tired of this. But long story short, the police showed up, and just in time, and managed to arrest Jerry and these 2 guys. One of them was named John, apparently the guy who told me to be quiet. Long story short, turned out both of them were part of this human trafficking circle. That they were preying up on young girls like myself to pretend to be this guy, that Jerry was being used as a fake boyfriend bait to trap any young girls so they can be selling off to rich buyers across the world. I was probably their latest target, but luckily for both that with the evidence that they were in the van, that were duct tape, ropes, all kinds of things. I did testify in a court against those people, and they managed to bring down their entire organization as well. I later found out that from the FBI agent who was connected to this case that these two guys, John and his accomplice, or his partner apparently, they actually had this small abandoned warehouse where they had been holding about 12 other young girls from age 20 to 25. All of them was waiting to be sold out or being transported to their supposed new place. I don't know what was supposed to happen. And, well, those girls was saved, but traumatized for sure. More traumatized than I was. But I actually did meet up with those girls by the FBI, and they heard my side of the story as well, and they were at least happy I was not that traumatized as they were. But at least they were happy that I was okay. And long story short, after that, Jerry, John, and the other people involved in this human trafficking organization end up in a lifetime in jail without possibility of parole. Meaning, they will be in there until they die of rotting in those cells. I am currently still in college, but I'm also taking part of this trafficking human survivors organization, like a non-profit organization that helps victims of having proof from this. Since I was basically a victim myself, but anyways, this is how I felt as terrified. Like I said in the beginning, it happens I have these nightmares, but I was meant to be captured, being sold, and I was never been see my female friends or family again. I told my family and brother Tom, and I will always listen to Tom's feelings next time. And so that's where my horrifying story about when my ex-boyfriend tried to sell me. And Jerry, you belong where you actually were belong to, in prison for life. Thank you for listening.